Yeah, so today I'm going to show you two of the pesto I made from scratch. They're actually very simple recipe. The differences between those two are the key ingredient inside. So basically, if you kind of look them, the color-ish wise, they look very similar, and I actually have the taste, and I think they taste. The one with the parsley definitely tastes much stronger. It's like the parsley taste just came through really nicely. But I think the basil one is actually smells really good. But when you kind of taste it, you can't really taste much. But I bet both of them will go really well with pasta and bread. And the reason I want to try those two different recipes is because usually, like, sometimes I go to the store and they will sometimes run out of the traditional basil, where they will only have parsley or cilantro or just, sort of like hydro basil, depending on the season, right? So here I want to do like a control experiment so that I can kind of taste and compare, like do a blind tasting to see whether, which one is better. Well, maybe they both say good, which is great, because then, I can then continuously have the flexibility to purchase more different green-ish things to make like the green sauce. Maybe that I shouldn't call them pesto anymore. But yeah, so if you're curious, the recipe is really simple. I basically look up a number of recipes online. The key thing is to have the acid, which you can use lemon and lemon zest to give it the aroma, and definitely buy very great olive oil. So basically, based on one of the cooking book I read, you do want to buy the olive oil that actually have the harvest date, which usually that's an indication of this olive oil is of higher quality. So this is the one I'm using. It's definitely not being sponsored or anything, but this is just the one I can find in the local store. And I only use this for making salsa of this type, or pasta bread. I don't usually use this to cook. They're quite expensive, but it definitely helps with bringing the flavor out. The third thing is the sort of the grains themselves, right? But then we already covered that. The last thing, but not the least, is the nuts. I've tried a bunch of different nuts. The original recipe usually called for pine nuts, but they are a little bit harder to find in the local grocery store, as well as like super expensive compared to other nuts. So what I got here is that I use almond, and I also tried the variation of using walnuts. I think they both taste okay. I personally like the almond version because the almond version, actually, you can't really taste the nuts, which I like. But if you're using walnut, the walnut taste definitely came through, which I personally don't prefer. But it's up to you, right? Yeah, so with those four ingredients, again, the greens, you pick the greens, and you pick the acid, and then you have the olive oil, and then the nuts, and then at the end, well, okay, actually, pretty critical. I actually messed it once. Garlic. You have to put in a number of garlic. So for me, I like the garlicky flavor. The original recipe usually call for like one piece of garlic. I usually end up using 4 or 5. You definitely have to taste it once you sort of like using the blender or any kind of method to crush to get this consistent sauce. I'm lazy, so I just use food processor, but you can definitely use other method like chopping or even the pesto version. Yeah. So have fun and bon appetit.